welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Wright. I'm over operations. Again, we
That's me. Sorry.
I think that was fine. That's Mary at that. So anyway, thank you again for being here this evening and continuing the hard work. I will remind you that we do have a forum later this week on the 12th at Bryan Station High School. Welcome to our community folks who are here to observe the process. We appreciate you being here and taking an interest in the conversation that's going on. So with that, I will turn it back over to Alan to take us to approval of the minutes and the rest of the work we have to do this afternoon.
Everyone does have the minutes in front of them. Got an opportunity to review. I'll give you just a second. Ron, you usually have a comment or two.
I wasn't here, so I have to abstain.
Well, then we're probably screwed then. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you, they passed. Very brief opening remarks tonight, and it has a lot to do with schedule and process. As Mary said, we want to remind the public that we have 2 consecutive forums that will be open to the entire community. We encourage everyone to come. I think Lisa, we're capable of handling hundreds.
Yes, we'll have 25 tables that will be
Yeah. So that's a lot of folks. We think we'll be able to accommodate. The setup is going to be very simple. Each of the committee members will be at the table in a few moments or later in the last part of today's meeting. I'm going to ask Lisa to share with you some basic questions that will be available that ought to be discussed. But it's open to any comments, commentary, concerns, what we hope are good suggestions on how we can better do our work as we move forward. We will be meeting from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock to accommodate the number of folks who have said they couldn't get here at 4:30. So we're backing it up to 6. We'll go to 8 o'clock both nights, Thursday at Bryan Station High School, and next Tuesday, Monday the 16th at Tate's Creek High School. What we will ask folks to do, in addition to their comments, to the committee members who will be intently listening, is you can write comments in your own words, suggestions, ideas on sticky notes, and we will collate and gather all of them for distribution to the committee's next discussion. So we think we've got a good plan in place. I am the person, by the way, who determined that we're going to use this format rather than have all the committees sitting there listening to one person at a time come to a microphone. I don't think that's very efficient. I certainly don't think it's going to be, we would be able to get nearly as much information to our committee that way. So if you have concerns about that, just, be mad at me. But we think that is a better way to do this process. Tonight, I am hopeful that we can revisit. As you know, all we have, and Bob's going to explain in just a minute, all the maps, but we have our tentative lines drawn right now. Emphasis on the word tentative. We have gotten numerous suggestions on how we might change or make these lines better. Those are the considerations I want to deal with tonight, if we can. I recognize that our last conversation about grandfathering at our last meeting. Raised an awful lot of commentary on Let's Talk, but I'm afraid we won't have time to deal with, revisit, relitigate that tonight. We're just not going to do it. We want to try to make sure that we are on the right track for these lines before the public forums. At 6:15 or 6:20, before we adjourn, we are going to have a little bit of a conversation about how we do the public forums amongst us. And of course, we want the public, as always, to be able to hear our conversations. One personal aside, a number of comments that I've seen in blogs, which I try to avoid, my daughter keeps sending them to me, about the work of the committee, particularly the chairman, is about the process. And I just simply want to say that we've done all we can, I believe all that can be done to make sure that the public understands that this entire process is open to the public. Every single meeting we've had is open to the public. We do have an organizational meeting prior to this one, 15 minutes beforehand. It's not private. Members of the public come in there. So for all of those folks who think that we're trying to hide something, we're not. I was going to say that. We're just not. And as most of you know who have been engaged in this process, all of the commentaries and emails and letters that we get are shared with the entire committee. So you don't have to send one to each one of us. And frankly, we would encourage neighborhood groups or small groups not to copy and paste one letter and then, you know, everybody in the neighborhood send it to us. You know, we can read. We'll get it on the first one. And we do share them. So I'm just trying to streamline the process and maybe reduce some of the concern and stress level in the community. We can make this easier if we are listening. So having said that, Bob, what I would like you to do, based on what some of the committee members have asked for and the public, we have created these maps. And if you can explain to everybody what they are, that would be valuable.
Is this working yet? The maps that we have up here at this point in time are primarily, they're maps that you've seen before, but these, of course, are the free and reduced lunch maps with counts of students. And so if you want to be looking at a map, or if you want to get up during the meeting and come and look at a map for a specific detail, you can do that. Of course, Scott will work with you and follow through on any sorts of recommendations you want him to evaluate, any sorts of ideas. But if you want to come up and look at some of the specific numbers and all that, high school, middle school, and elementary. And as before, these are shown with 50% free and reduced lunch and above in pink, and 50% free and reduced lunch below in green. Scott's maps that he will show on the screen are probably more detailed, going to show both 25% and 75% breakdowns. In fact, if you look at the screen just for a moment, the light green indicates 25% and below free and reduced lunch. Areas such as near Cassidy and near Rosa Parks. The darker green is between 25% and 50% free and reduced lunch, such as near Clay's Mill or near Meadowthorpe. The lighter pink colors indicate between 50 and 75% free and reduced lunch, such as near on the Russell Cave corridor and out near between Alumni and Richmond Road and Garden Springs area, the immediate vicinity. The darker rows indicates the 75% and above free and reduced lunch, such as Cardinal Valley or the immediate vicinity of Winburn. The grayish or whatever the hatch marks that are shades of gray indicate that there's less than 5 students.
How many shades of gray are there?
Yes.
No, and no. No. Rated G for general audience. I should know.
Ellen has no hair. There's no gray there.
No gray.
Shade of gray.
No gray. Okay. We know
It
was getting dull.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. These other maps, you asked for maps where you could read the streets in detail, and we will have more maps clear at the meetings on Thursday, but at least for the time being,
And they're being driven over now.
some are being brought over right now. And Scott may use those at times on the screen. The maps I have here are existing maps that we've had for the last 5 years in color, and I simply put black lines on top of them showing what the new boundaries are. And so these maps, if you want to come up and look at any portion of it, you can see and read street names on these maps easily. And in this particular case, I wrote down the names of the schools that change a lot. Stonewall, Picadome, Booker T. Washington, the New North Elementary, Northern Elementary, Yates, the New East Elementary, and Ace. Those are the schools that change probably the most. And in the case of elementary, this also has free and reduced lunch information that you saw before with the boundaries overlaid. So in fact, when you see the boundaries overlaid on one of these free and reduced lunch maps, and Scott has one of those that he can put on the large screen too, you could look at the edge of any particular area and see maybe there's something that would be worth changing. Here's an area that's primarily green, but there's a red area right next to it. Low free and reduced lunch here, but there's an area right there that could diversify it if you wanted to. This is the elementary map. This is the middle school map showing the existing middle school boundaries in color with a black outline on top of it to show proposed. That, by the way, is the map that I was referring to where the elementary boundaries are right on top of the map that has a lot of free and reduced lunch information. We appreciate that it's a little bit hard to read, but if you want to ask Scott to focus on an area at any time, you can. Or if you want to look at the paper notes here. This shows the middle school. His maps will emphasize elementary, but he could probably do something in middle school if he needed it. And this shows the high school. And so, for example, at the high school level, you can see that this area in green shows that we changed the Leestown Road corridor from Bryan Station High School to the black line, which shows the edge of Dunbar. That's an example of an area that changed from Bryan Station to Dunbar.
That's on the other side of this.
Yes, that's on the south side of Leestown. Leestown Straits. And there's a number of other examples if you want to discuss any one of them from this map, or the middle, or the high. We can pull these up or put them on the easels when you're discussing them. I'm not sure where you would like to start, elementary, middle, or high, but we could certainly leave, if you're going to do one of those levels first, you can leave that one up here, and Scott will focus in on that on the screen.
As a matter of sort of a protocol question, if we make a couple or a few tweaks, as it were, tonight, how will they be displayed to the public on Thursday?
Well, I can create that will large maps that you can put around the district or around the room that you're using.
But these will then be rendered somewhat changed.
Yes, they can be. I mean, you can choose to either show the maps kind of exactly as they are today before the discussion, or you can include the changes in the discussion. We think that they'll probably be at a simple enough level that could be shown on Thursday.
Well, I think ideally, I should probably ask the committee this, but it seems to me, Lisa, that whatever changes we might make tonight might be of value to have on Thursday and Monday.
Absolutely. What I have worked out with our print shop and what Scott and I have spoken about was that after you make any changes this evening, then he will, as he does after each meeting, he will upload your revised maps. If we can have those maps to the print shop tomorrow morning, they will make a copy of the elementary zone, proposed elementary, proposed middle, and proposed high school. We will have a set of those 3 maps with up on a piece of foam core at each of your 25 discussion groups, so that you'll have that available. Plus, we'll make these 11 by 17 copies that everyone will get as they walk in the door.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, folks. We've got all our tools. Ron, I think you wanted to make a comment before we.
Yeah, I mean,
Before we start this process, and ladies, gentlemen, let me just say this. We basically got an hour and a half to take a look at all of these suggestions that have been sent to us. Not all of them make sense, and we may not want to address them. Which means we can't have a hell of a lot of protracted conversation if we're going to get this done in time to have maps for the public on Thursday.
so I should keep it short, is what you're saying.
Well,
I would just,
everybody but you.
we have these guiding principles, and we put together drafts, and the emphasis on drafts. And some people, from the public to even school principals, are seeming to not understand these are drafts. There's still work to be done. Some of the principles conflict with each other in certain cases. And so when you make, we can't do everything perfectly that was suggested in the guiding principles. But my position on this is that we should do no harm. So when we make a change, I mean, our ultimate goal was to populate 2 new elementary schools and a new high school. We could have done that just in surrounding areas and not touching the rest of the district. That would have left some capacity issues, et cetera. But I think that if we're going to be making changes that, perhaps help the principal of going to a closer school and changing an existing school district, but it makes another principle that's important to us, like socioeconomic balance, it makes it worse off, I think that's where we shouldn't be going. And we have done that with our elementary school proposed map. In particular, the area around Dixie Elementary, and also the areas of Mill Creek, Veterans, and Southern, we have moved kids from a high-income neighborhood out of Southern into Veterans, and we've moved a high-poverty, low-income area in the Trent Corridor out of Southern into Mill Creek, and there are several examples of this. So I would like to revisit those elementary areas where we know that they have made things worse with respect to at least one of the guiding principles, and take another look at those. So.
And if I may say, that this map does help show that. Okay. Real briefly, these numbers that you actually saw before are approximate free and reduced lunch figures for the resident population. When it only shows one number, one symbol, basically they didn't change. You might have changed the boundary a little bit, but the free and reduced lunch didn't change appreciably. When I mean that, say 1, 2, 3% it might have changed. But there's several cases where you'll see two circles right next to each other that show how much it changed. The circle on top shows what it is with the proposal, in this case 84%. The circle below shows 57%. That's the resident population. That's not to say exactly what's going to happen in the school. As you can see, in this example, Breckenridge goes from 57% in the attendance area to 84%. I might as well go ahead and hit, there's only about 6 that changed a lot. Of course, the new school is 36%, and it took a lot of kids out of Yates. Yates changed from 60 to 77%. Let me put the yellow. Yes. The new East School produced a lot of changes in Yates because such a large area came out of Yates. And so the free and reduced lunch at Yates changed from 60% to 77%, and that's as residents, not necessarily who goes there. In the new North, the new school would be 58%, and Sandersville is 36%, and Booker T is 90%. These are affected considerably by the new school, but their free and reduced lunch does not change drastically. Sandersville is close to that now, and Booker T is close to that. They didn't change drastically. When you changed the area out near the county line to go from Picadome to Stonewall, that didn't make a big change to Stonewall, but it did make a big change to Picadome. Picadome went from 30% free and reduced to 64%. Out to Tate's Creek Road corridor, there were several changes, and basically adding more areas to veterans didn't change veterans. It stayed around 14%. But it did change Southern. And the combination of things, you took this area here near South Point, including South Point subdivision and a little bit more, you took that out of Lansdowne and put it in Southern. So Southern actually went from 61% free and reduced lunch to 49%. So the combination of things here, Southern's basically, since we average 55% at the elementary level, that just flips either way. But it made a big change in Lansdowne. Lansdowne went from 61 up to 76%, becoming one of the highest free and reduced. And Mill Creek, you took a couple areas out of Mill Creek and put one area in. And in this case, you're trying to get to the closer school and eliminate a discontiguous area. But it does increase the free and reduced lunch at Mill Creek from 60 to 7. So, and one final thing, back to this example, this is Breckenridge, going from 57 to 84. Not as in the building. The building is different because there's so many kids out near Athens-Charlesburg who go to Athens-Charlesburg anyway. But Athens-Charlesburg is currently about 21% free and reduced lunch based on the attendance area, and it changes to 15. So in summary, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 schools that change a lot at the elementary level, free and reduced lunch, in terms of the attendance area, resident population.
So, Ron, in your thought process, does this fall within the definition of what you're saying is doing harm?
I think it does. We're making changes to areas, and it's exacerbating the high poverty school issue. I don't know what it would look like, but we took a chunk out of Southern and put them in veterans, and I wonder what it would look like to put them back, and instead of putting the transporter area, the pocket that was discontiguous that went to Southern, instead of putting them in Mill Creek, which has made that situation worse with that particular principle, put them in veterans instead of the Waterford area. And that's my neighborhood, so we have to look at this.
That was part of a previous plan.
Ron, I think that change that you're talking about right now is what actually set the computer-generated map in motion when we first started talking about socioeconomic diversity, because we didn't want to move that area into Veterans Park. So I would love to see it go in there.
We went through the capacity numbers for the elementary schools up here.
Sure. Scott, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
We're looking at elementaries, of course. We're wondering if we could have the capacity numbers up.
Yes, we can. I'm going to just bring it up elementary right now.
And then if we could just see how many kids are in that island that we talked about.
There's how
veterans
contradictory principles are. That whether it's capacity or proximity or socioeconomic, they are clearly, truly incompatible. Each time we deal with one, we're impacting one of the others.
I think this is a really good area to show how it can be done, though, because all of these schools are within pretty much a 1 mile, 1.5 mile radius of each other, where you can actually improve socioeconomic diversity and still stay close to home.
So which area? I heard that these were the schools that we were looking at, but I wasn't sure exactly which area in those schools.
Study areas 529, 530, 531 and 532, and 514 and 515. At least that's the area that is proposed to change from Southern, to Mill Creek.
Did you say that some of us would be able to walk to Mill Creek, though?
Some would be able to walk.
I think that hadn't we looked at busing the ones who would have to be bused regardless, but allowing the kids who could walk to Mill Creek to walk?
Yes.
I think it was 514 or 515 you said could walk to Mill Creek. Is that correct?
514 and 529, I believe.
Let me ask a committee question here. Is there a consensus feeling that Ron's correct? There are a lot of guiding principles, and change in some of the socioeconomic free and reduced lunch numbers, is that worthy of our consideration to make some changes? Are we all agree with that?
I think we should make them worse in terms of those free and reduced numbers. When you look at the areas that you identified, Bob, you definitely should make any worse than you can improve from the areas that are contiguous. We should try that too, but definitely not make them jump.
Well, I don't want us to be making, spending time and making these changes if we're not all on board with the value that we're talking about.
I agree with them. I mean, I don't think just for a marginal benefit on some improvement on socioeconomic, some schools to make some of them so vastly worse. I mean, and there's not that many. There's 4 maybe schools that we kind of identified that are a big jump high. So I would like to look at that because I agree that for a little bit of improvement to make some of them worse, maybe going backwards. And I don't think that's what we want to do.
I agree.
I agree.
Betsy, was that you? Okay. Over here?
I agree.
Getting some head nods, okay. Mark? All right, well then let's continue. Let's identify those 4 or 5. I mean, specifically, let's take a look at it. We certainly have had enough commentary from the public to identify the study areas that we think we're looking at. Now that we have street maps, street names. How do you think those ones? Well, I can't, the closer to school became a walking distance, proximity, neighborhood integrity, all of the things that we've added around.
In the case of Picadome, we dealt with the anomaly of having a huge non-contiguous chunk outside towards the county line. So now Picadome, in my opinion, the free and reduced number in Picadome is not really a bad number, and it's probably now more reflective of the neighborhood that this looks like. But a lot of the change to Picadome was a result of that non-contiguous.
But we have moved, for example, in the Nicholasville Road corridor. Some of those kids now are in Picadome as opposed to Glendale. So you got to look at everything. It's got to be a holistic approach. There are no independent foods here. Right.
Now, all this stuff over there, Hartford, most historically meant the center.
Exactly.
Why would you change that?
Well,
It's closer to veterans, but they're going to Southern now.
It messes up the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's my contention, yes.
So where do we want to start?
Now, one more thing.
yeah, done.
I think we may be close enough now, instead of moving whole areas, we may be able to move streets. We've got a street map, like she's talking about, you moving part of that kind of boulevard area that can walk to Mill Creek. It may not be that whole study group, it may be a part of that study.
Scott, procedurally, what Doug is suggesting is not moving study areas, but really street by street. Is that doable?
It's doable, but you won't be able to see the results immediately. It's something where I'll have to go back and do some editing and actually split study areas to do it. I mean, it's doable, not suggested, but it can be done if we need to do it. Similar to what we did in that 598, where I had split a neighborhood and we went back and adjusted it. We could do things like that.
Al, I agree with Doug on that. I mean, that's why I want to see the streets, so we could just go there and take.
I mean, it's tedious, but I think it makes some sense.
Well, I mean, it's
Maybe where we're at.
the most part of the district is fine. It's just a few streets around here.
Now, is moving a couple of streets going to make a big enough difference in what we're talking about?
Yeah, in other words, we wouldn't really get to see the impact on our free and reduced percentages and our capacity numbers. On the other hand, we're probably suggesting that it won't be a big deal one way or the other, right?
Right, but if you're talking about streets, because I think
Right
part
there.
of, right here, I think part of the point had been that if you were moving study areas 5, 15, 31, 32, and 30, that's almost kind of a neighborhood-ish, and so moving them would keep them together at Veterans Park so that it would be their neighborhood. So I think that was what Azara said when you kind of talked about if they all go together, it would be a neighborhood school. So I think if we just start with streets, then we're
I'm not talking about just an individual street. I mean, if you look at these maps, you can see boundaries and you can see natural geography things where things just ought to be moved. I mean, but you can't. I've always been. I thought the study areas were arbitrary. I mean, they weren't. Had nothing to do with geography.
Well, I think in the case of the Veterans Park, Mule Creek, Southern situation that we're talking about right now, we can actually look at the study groups as a whole, because the study areas that go to Mule Creek right now, the 4 that are kind of right there together, they already are used to being bused to Southern, which is all in the same, basically in the same area, just across the street of Veterans Park. They did that for the diversity piece 10, 20 years ago, and I feel like that's not something that we should have changed unless we're changing for the better, which means they go from Southern to Veterans Park.
Can we tell how many kids are in that area? You know what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right now, I think Veterans Park is at, what, 107%? This is
I'm talking about how many kids are in the study area, just so we know how many kids we're talking about.
You wanted the walking study areas of 514 and 529,
Oh, full.
or just all of them?
The 4 that were in that
Go
area.
to Southern.
the 4 that would have to be bused anyway, the 15,
The 4 that are
29,
going
30,
to Southern.
or not 514 and 529 because they can walk, right? But the ones that would have to be bused anyway?
I think there's, I mean, I think that entire area.
That would be 515, 31, 531, 532, and 530. Those are the 4 that would not walk, and then the other 2.
Yeah, if I turn this stuff off here, the walking are the blue lines. Walking of Mill Creek are the blue lines. So it does end in 514, 529. So these are not walkable. These are outside of that 1 mile walk zone.
So we've got them on a bus.
And even looking at 514 and 529, we were just talking, I don't know that I would send my kindergartner that far to walk to, I mean, I wouldn't send my kindergartner that far away, but I wouldn't.
It's on the very edge of walkability.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where the walkability ends here in 514, 529. So there's some streets that are actually outside of walking distance in those 2 study areas also.
So in that grouping, how many kids are there?
This whole group here, okay.
Okay.
140.
140. So how many kids are in the study area that we took out of Southern and put back into Veterans Park? Because that's what we're proposing. That we take that.
Sure, Scott got the same figure.
Yeah, I've got 136 in this area.
The other thing, too, is we did take an area out of Mill Creek. We took 615 out of Mill Creek and put it into Veterans Park. I don't know how many kids are in there. It's down at the south end of the county line.
21.
What are you suggesting we'll put it back?
If we're looking to even out numbers and not make moves, and those kids, those kids couldn't walk to Veterans Park anyway. I mean,
Let me just remind us that a lot of this work was based on getting close on our capacities. And if we make any significant changes here, we're probably going to have to go back and maybe look at that again, too. So let's be judicious here.
Well, bringing these 5 study areas back to Southern does bring Southern up to 112%, and Mill Creek down to 76%.
We wanted to put them in Veterans Park.
Yeah, put them in Veterans Park.
At 107.
And And then we're going to, what was the study group that we took out of Southern from Waterford and put into Veterans Park? So we need to put them back in Southern.
There's all of Waterford phase.
Yeah. There's
527 was not one of the ones that we wanted to move, though, correct?
No.
Okay.
there's about 100 students in Waterford.
Can we,
Some of them already go to Veterans by out of area, but
right. But what does it look like if we put them back to Southern? It would almost be an even swap.
Well, and the third dimension of this is landfill, because you took South Point and a little bit more out of Lansdowne, so there was a large change in Lansdowne. The change in Southern, it's still within 5 or 6% of the norm. So to some extent, I would say your concern isn't so much Southern as it might be Lansdowne.
Okay.
But
So do we look at putting some of those?
South Point back into Lansdowne. It's
Look what we did.
discontiguous.
Look what we did to Veterans Park, though. We're at 128%.
Right. We're going to move.
Yeah,
We're going to move people out of there.
The Waterford people out of there, though.
So you could put Waterford into Southern, and then put South Point
Back into Lansdowne.
back into Lansdowne.
Let's make that move and see what it does to the numbers.
Okay, where's is this the Waterford area or?
Waterford is
Study areas,
557, 558, 563, and 598. 4 study areas. And you can see if they walk.
So the purple line are walking.
So 598 not walk, and parts of 563 can't walk. All of 558 can walk, and only a small part of 557 can walk.
So the majority can't walk?
About half of them can.
Yeah, if you're going to do it by study area, one study area, this study area can walk. Part of this one, but actually most of that. This cannot, and this very little of that can.
If I may, the issue is not whether they could walk or not. It's whether we're moving them from one school to another and harming the socioeconomic balance in those schools.
Then you get into the value question of how much is, how do you define harm? Is it 1% more, or is it beyond the norm, or is it that?
Do you want me to move these 4 study areas or 5 study areas?
Right.
You would like me to do that?
Not the
4.
fifth.
Just 4. That's all.
And I think Bill gave us some numbers a while back about what's the school at high poverty. I think he said anything over 75%, correct? Correct. And so that, if you look at when we project out over the next years too, if that continues to grow and gets you towards that 75%, we know that's harmful. Or if it's above the 75% now based on the changes we've made, that makes that harmful. So I think we should probably use what Bill's mission reports or the research is that a high poverty school, anything over 75%.
Are these, just to confirm, are these the 4 study areas?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, never mind.
Don't let me say yes for you. I mean, I'll say yes to be clear, but if you don't agree, say.
So I'm bringing up the socioeconomic, the free and reduced numbers. We can see what it did. Southern's at 108, and Veterans Park is 111%, and we'll see what it changed for the socioeconomic, the free reduced. Eventually, if it actually does come up and work for me. Okay. So, Southern was 51 and 49, and now it's 57 and 43. And Veterans Park was 87 and 13, and now it's 72 and 28.
Is that a significant enough difference that we're saying that we want walkability for all elementary schools unless you live in Waterford Park, which is kind of what we've done here. We took great care for walkability when we did this. I mean, we devoted an entire meeting to getting the walkability right, and now we've just undid it for one neighborhood.
And I'm not suggesting we stop there, but the walkability thing was something that kind of came in at the last minute of a meeting. We all of a sudden moved Waterford. And
I don't agree that it came in at the last minute. I remember that we spent an entire meeting working on closest to schools on the elementary school.
That's why we had Scott do the whole study of which schools have the walking areas. I totally agree with you.
I
have a very hard time, and I understand. I understand the balance. I feel very, very conflicted. But I also have a very hard time putting children on a bus when they can walk to school. I have a very hard time with that.
When children are walking to a school that is underperforming, after already being in a school that's proficiently performing or high performing, I don't see how we are doing them any justice.
Well, which ones are you talking about? I'm sorry.
The study groups that we just moved from the Mill Creek area and put into Veterans Park. We're talking about neighborhood schools, and we're talking about being close to home, and we're talking about socioeconomic diversity, and what we just did covered all three of those. So I see how it did no harm to anyone. The students that are already used to being bused are still being bused. There has been no true significant change there for anybody in the area. The students that have been bused to Southern will now just go to Veterans Park. The students that were already in Southern have been in Southern. There's no difference, except for the way it looks on the paper. We haven't made any significant changes. So that even goes back to the beginning when we said don't make as few changes as possible. We have not changed their structure very much and made a pretty large improvement.
And I think in order to make the conflicting principles balance in any way, you have to compromise on each of those, which is what you just said, basically. So that means that you may lose some walkability on one to help out the free and reduced numbers. If you do that, we're not going to go back and forth. We're going to always go one way with one principle, and then we find ourselves short on the other. So that means we have to determine how much of that, that balance in terms of a compromise that you give up to each of the principles. To me, that was reasonable to put those children back there so that it did reduce the free and reduced lunch numbers, took them to a more proficient school, so that way you satisfy pieces of that, and you won't be able to solve it all. So I kind of agree with that. And so those are the type of moves that we'll probably be facing for the next steps we take.
And I believe
Malcolm, isn't it also fair that neighborhood schools or walkability might be a higher priority at the elementary school level, whereas socioeconomic might take a higher priority in the middle school and high school? Do we place the same priority at every level?
If you are targeting younger children and walkability, that is to be considered.
Not when the achievement gap starts in elementary school. If anything, the socioeconomic diversity piece would be more important at the elementary school level than middle and high, because the elementary school is where that gap begins.
But it is also in much more direct conflict with all the other principles of proximity and capacity, what we said from the very beginning. We can't legislate where people live, and or we can't put people in the nearest schools and have proximity as an important piece, and still try to balance socioeconomic diversity. And it's harder in the elementary schools because we're dealing with smaller groups and more closely knit neighborhoods.
I understand that also, but I also believe that how we have it on the map now, everything that we have done, I believe has led us to now, that allows us to see that we're only working with about 6 schools. We can do this study group by study group. It is hard. It is a little bit more touchy or a sensitive topic, but I believe it can be done and it should be done. I mean, this is a perfect example of how you can shift within a less than a mile, mile and a half radius and achieve almost all of those goals. Some people do have to get on a bus and they're not walking, but in this particular area, that's what they're doing anyway. So we haven't made a change that didn't have to be changed, and we've improved numbers.
My question, is there flexibility in terms of the capacity? We asked a question about what was harmful for free and reduced. What can we live with in regards to each particular location, school, in regards to being more flexible on capacity in order to kind of balance out this whole, every time we move to free and reduced, we increase capacity? Is there a benchmark for us to say we're okay at this particular location because we can add something? I know we talked about cost, but
Because Nate was on base now. So the school board didn't give us any of those numbers. They wanted to. They would have. They wanted, we have 54% free and reduced lunch district-wide. And if the school board had wanted to have absolute balance, they would have said, figure out a way to get 54% in every school. Same thing with capacity. I don't want anybody, we've got 96% capacity, I don't want any school over 96%. With some of the comments that we've gotten, that I've gotten, said make sure every school is within 30 to 45% free and reduced lunch. You can't do it because we're at 54 district-wide. And so some of the things that we're hearing are nonsensical, or folks who just aren't paying attention. But nevertheless, it's important for us, I think, to remember that there are some situations that we can't put in pigeonhole with balanced numbers or not. I think we'll get into trouble if we try to do that. And if we do it on the free and reduced side, I wonder if it doesn't make sense to talk more about minimum rather than maximum. In other words, maybe we ought to have a minimum standard of no school less than 25%, as opposed to saying we want maximum at 75%, because, we've got 90% at Booker T and some other places, and there's not much we can do about it except put them to break up their neighborhoods and move them all over town, which those neighborhoods don't want us to do either.
Kind of getting out in the weeds here, the walkability thing is important. But when we're moving kids from their current school to improve walkability and decreasing the diversity in some of the schools, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And again, walkability, 1 mile. How many kindergartners and first graders are out there walking a mile to school?
Not very many.
Not very many. So why is it important to have, if it's within a mile of school, to have them in that zone? I mean, I'm just throwing that out.
Once again, just to remind us,
Yep.
look at our guiding principles.
Yes.
The word walkability ain't in there.
No, it isn't. But I also believe, I mean,
The
like.
transportation costs are.
Yes.
So,
But we have looked at all of these things, and what we're doing now is not increasing busing, is not mass busing. We're not taking kids from one elementary school all the way across town to another. We are looking at direct impact in very close areas, and I believe that's just the best way to proceed at this time to make sure that we can clean up some of the numbers, especially the ones that we have impacted with those other guiding principles. Now, we might not be able to go back. I do not propose redoing the whole map. I believe that we have all agreed that there is no way to to get rid of poverty by redistricting. But we all have agreed that if there are areas that we can make significant change with little busing, that we should do that. And I think this is that moment that happens.
One thing that I would like for us to just consider, and that, because I thought a lot about this move, I emailed Alan about it last week, is that area that we're talking about moving from Mill Creek to Veterans Park. Having lived in that neighborhood for a lot of my life, there's a lot of people in that neighborhood who rely on public transportation. And in the Veterans Park area, there is no Lex train stops available for those people. So if we're concerned about parental involvement, I just wonder, is that going to harm that?
I don't see that harming that. As parents, we get to where we want to go. But if we can carpool.
Not everybody can, though.
Not everybody.
Not everybody can.
Well, then we're back to the issue of neighborhood, school close to your neighborhood so everybody can attend, and then we've got capacities of 170% and things like that. So we looked at that early on.
Right.
But that's a good point, though.
Do we have any thoughts that we want to make suggestions to Scott?
I have one thing I'd like to say.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that we finish this conversation about the 4 or 5 schools we're talking about: Southern, Veterans, Mill Creek, Lansdowne.
Lansdowne, if you at least now do Lansdowne, you would see as a package these 3 or 4 changes all put together. Do they approximately meet capacity or not, and what do they do to all 4 schools?
Let's do it.
The Lansdowne piece, South Point has been in Lansdowne for years. Unfortunately, the boundaries there of study areas don't match perfectly, but nevertheless, we're talking about 595, 596, and 597. 596 has a lot of kids. Total.
Sorry. Was that at South Point?
South Point. This is more than just South Point, the way the study areas are drawn. But it's about
It's part of Pinnacle, too, though.
140, 150 kids.
Got to crack the whip here. We're bogged down again. And there are a couple of other locales that we want to deal with. I want to deal with the Shea Road thing if we can.
Okay, Bob, could you give me those? Are these included in the South Point?
Yes, 595, 596, and 597.
Okay.
In fact, it's primarily 595 and 597. 596 is kind of mixed neighborhoods.
It's 136, yeah. Those.
Once you do that, if you put those in Lansdowne,
But what's the purpose behind putting them in Lansdowne?
That's where they are now.
Okay.
Reduced capacity at Southern.
and improve the free and reduced lunch balance at Lansdowne's at 76 in the proposal.
If you want to see it, I can do it.
Yep, we do, yes, please.
So we took Southern down, but we put Lansdowne at 118%.
It's already at 97.
No,
We took those three little areas under New Circle Road on Lansdowne Road and moved them out of Southern into Lansdowne.
Because the neighbors did not believe that was
No, that's
walkable.
back up to that.
No. There's an area of. Well, that's right. I'm thinking.
That's currently
Right, I'm thinking we're all on close down.
So now we have Lansdowne over at 118. And we also, when we took from Mill Creek, we're down at 76% there.
That's a microcosm of this whole field, folks. We can't do both.
So is there something we want to try to do?
Does it make sense to leave 596 out?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk.
how many kids are in 596? Can we take them back out?
So leave them at Southern
So you leave 596 at Southern.
and see what that does to Lansdowne.
72 kids in 596.
Southern is 98, Lansdowne is 107.
On capacity, what would you offer?
Are we not concerned about splitting neighborhoods anymore?
We got the neighborhood overlay.
So where is the neighborhood split?
You tell us, turn it on.
Yeah, 596 is fully by the neighborhood.
Okay. So we would split it here. So we really need to know how many students are in this southern portion.
It's fair to say it's less than half.
Yeah.
But it is splitting it. Is that a natural split there?
There's a creek there, and the north of that creek is definitely a subdivision, newer subdivision.
Okay, so in there are 22 students. These represent 22 students in this area.
Keep their neighborhood and
Yeah.
put them to Lansdowne.
Put it back to Southern, right?
Lansdowne.
I mean, Lansdowne.
Those 22 right down to 110%.
So that would be Lansdowne up by 22 students and Southern down by 22 students.
Can we see what it does to the free and reduced?
Well, I can give you, with this configuration, the free and reduced, I can't immediately give you the...
Those 22 aren't going to make that big of a difference. What did the other change make?
Right.
Okay, Southern's at 55 and 45, and it was at 51.49. And Lansdowne went from 24.76 to 29.71.
And veterans?
Under, and it's under the poverty. So
72.20. You don't remember, that's still a much bigger number than what it is today.
Right now, it's 61,
And now we got to find 200 kids to go to Mill Creek.
do we have to find 200 kids to go to Mill Creek? If they're an underperforming school or novice school, does that hurt the class size? It's not going to hurt the Title I funding because they're still going to be above the recommended.
We're not worried about the Title I fund.
I know, I'm just saying, do we have to find 200 more kids to put in there if that's going to reduce their class size, which could actually increase their ability to educate the children that are already in the school? Will we discuss that also?
Well, I mean, if you're interested in lowering the free and reduced lunch rate, then yes. You do need to find those other kids. And I think what we're going to find is we're going to wind up working in an entire circle and redoing the entire math for all the schools. No?
I don't think so. I don't think this has completely undone the math.
Weren't the performance numbers for Mill Creek the same as they were for Southern? Again, at the time, moving the Trent Boulevard kids really made no difference.
Lisa, do you know the answer to that?
Pull that up.
Thank you.
there was another area that you put in veterans that was in there.
Oh,
So it does make a point, though, that we have discussed and used as a value that we agreed with, and that is one of the ways to combat lower achievement is to have less capacity, less percentage of the capacity of the school, which translates, we think, into smaller class sizes.
But that's a lot of capacity.
I
That's
understand.
like 75%.
I doubt it.
And staffing is based on the students in the school. So.
Right, that's not necessarily the case.
that's my God.
I think just looking at these numbers as they are, Lansdowne actually has 110% capacity, but they now have a higher number of free and reduced lunch students. So why wouldn't we move students from there to Mill Creek? If our goal is to eliminate the attendance or capacity issues for those who have the schools which have higher free and reduced numbers, then we should move students from Lansdowne to Mill Creek.
And I'll just address your point earlier, because my understanding that just having fewer kids in the school doesn't necessarily guarantee you lower class sizes. It just reduces your staffing. If you have just fewer teachers, it's the same number of kids. The same ratio would be the same. You just have fewer teachers in the building.
And it doesn't really make, that makes sense to me, is that right?
Well, yes, that is correct at this point. I know that we are trying to work on some staffing formulas to make a change. That may be a little
So that may or may not be.
and teaching at an underperforming school. That's right. We're at half capacity. That's like Carter G. Woodson is in our building. My class sizes are 28, 29, 25, 33, and my lowest performing class is at about 20. So I'm not seeing any reduction in my class size numbers. In fact, they're much higher because we don't have the staffing to offset any of that.
And also, it doesn't really make any sense for us to be building 3 new elementary schools and intentionally leaving one school way under capacity because it's not performing very well, like it's the building's fault that it's not performing well.
Because what you do then is you create a very big stigma for that school.
Exactly.
That's what we're going through right now in Crawford. And that's, you know, because people make reasons in their head for why you're not full for what's happening. And I think that may happen. If we leave Mill Creek at 76%, people are going to say, well, why is this? What's wrong there? And I think I think it's dangerous to leave it that.
I agree.
Well, can we move 615? Is that the study area that we moved out of there to put back? Can we move that and see what it does for Mill Creek?
And I don't want to get bogged down, but I think one of the schools we were also going to address was Dixie, but I know we probably can't do that tonight. But
One comment about Dixie, I think there's a misunderstanding. This doesn't really change Dixie by default. If you want to talk about Dixie, fine, but in terms of what you've done, it barely changes Dixie at all.
and I think what we haven't taken into consideration is the magnet students that come into that program that push that free and reduced number up.
The question
You mean
is
down?
Down.
Right.
You had a question about achievement. Southern Mill Creek right now, Mill Creek has a raw score of 51.4, and Southern has a raw score of 63. Just for free and reduced lunch numbers, Mill Creek right now is at 79%, and Southern is at 69%.
I want to go back to the lowering capacity of that too. I think we're focusing on the current right now. The reason we talked about reducing high poverty students to have lower capacity, because that's one of the, you look at the research, that's one of the solutions to improve that. So you may not be there now, but that's part of the puzzle, is to one, lower the capacity of the building, and then hopefully make the recommendation to the board and to the district to add on to that as well. There's not, that alone won't do it. They've actually listed like 8 or 9 things you could do to improve the high poverty students as far as the achievement gap. That's just one piece.
But
So it may not be right now. You may not have that in place right now, but if you increase it, it doesn't help you get to the other 8 or 9 items or strategies that help you reduce or improve the achievement gap.
It's not necessarily about building capacity, it's about student-teacher ratio. So whether you're at 76% or 96%, your student-teacher ratio is still going to be 1 teacher for every 27 students. In a low-performing school, I think it's 1 to 29 in a higher-performing school. So until they are able to lower the ratio, that's where the difference is going to be. You can lower the ratio to 1 to 19 or 1 to 22 in a low-performing school, then you're going to be able to see the changes, whether it's at capacity or not. It's that ratio that's key, not the building capacity.
And that's what Melissa said we're working on, right?
And there's a little bit of a difference in us making a recommendation to do that and what Aaron's going to write up for us, and intentionally leaving 25% vacancy at a school and trying to force the board into following that recommendation because we didn't do our job.
Did we move 615 back into Mill Creek so we can see what it does?
It looks like it.
We did, and then brought it up to 81%.
And did that help the free and reduced lunch number any?
You check, in Veterans Park it's still at 123%.
This becomes a reason perhaps to put all of those.
514 and 529.
Yeah, so
Take 514.
Can we put 514 and 529 back in Mill Creek? And see what that does to
Okay.
capacity.
And if this gets to where if when you're finalizing things at whatever time, Scott needs to split 529 or split that one that we talked about yourself, you can do that.
So that does bring Mill Creek up to 94% and Veterans Park to 110%, and we'll see what it does to the free reduced. So Mill Creek is at 3367, and Veterans Park is at 8218. And we started it the day at Veterans Park was at 8713. So we reduced it 5%.
Which is the third. Number one. So you're talking about some impact, although 5% doesn't sound like
Right.
that many more children.
And a bigger impact probably for the rest of the trickle of our kids going to Veterans now. A bigger impact is just 3 years. We still have a Lansdowne and Southern issue that we got to do something about. That's Southern at 82%.
Yes, what was Southern? Southern is 4852.
Lansdowne. Southern is 80-something% capacity now.
Okay.
Is Southern a growing area? Is it 90% capacity? Will it just stay at 90% capacity?
Glassford is in Southern, so there'd be some growth.
No, capacity.
So do we have any suggestions maybe on where we want to start looking at?
Those 22 students, should we move them into Lansdowne or do we move them back into Southern?
Where? We moved it to Lansdowne.
We moved them to Lansdowne.
They haven't been moved yet. He's got to still bring
Yeah.
that area. But
Yeah, but once I split it, add 22 students to Lansdowne.
22 would be about 3%.
So now Southern will be under 80.
Yeah, no, that, the 22 would be added to Southern, which would take it from 83% up to 86%.
Actually, I think it's the other way.
Not true. It's the other way around. The 22 would be added to Lansdowne. I'm going to do the southern portion here of 596 to Lansdowne. So Lansdowne would get 22 more, which would bring it up to around 720. And Southern would go to 537.
So
what is it's a lot. All that. So
Do you want me to zoom in the area some more?
this area here, that's the farm that's going to be
Al,
developed.
Did we not
That's
put
gonna
water
add
back in Southern?
Yes.
It's not
It's not
showing.
saved that way.
Oh, it's,
I thought we did.
Well, if you look at the map right now, they're all in Veterans Park.
so have him, that's the problem.
Oh, yeah, well, we haven't done that.
I thought I did that. You guys saw me do it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Here, I think.
So
So that brought Southern up to 98%, Veterans Park down to 94%. Let's see, they're free reduced.
I don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Southern's 55.45, and it started the day at 51.49. So we've lowered the free reduced by 5%, 4%. Veterans Park is at 80%, 20%, and that started at 87.13.
So that's good.
Okay, any thoughts, folks?
I like it.
And where does it, go back and make sure another look at lands at?
I think they're at 107 still. We have to make something.
Yeah, they were over 100%.
What's the percentage? Yeah, 2971.
I mean, and we have some of the elementary schools still at like 123%. 107 seems minute in the scheme of things.
Right, we have some schools like Ace is at 117%, Cassidy is 113.
Those parks.
But they're in Southern.
Scott, can I ask you to try to put one more study area, 507, in Veterans Park, please?
Sure. In Veterans Park?
Yeah.
What's that taking there? 507?
It's non-contiguous. I know.
Okay. Wrong one.
No time.
Wrong one.
Makes our map. That's for sure.
What about Mill Creek, which is contiguous?
You're trying to look at the numbers, the free and reduced lunch numbers for Lansdowne, get those lower. That's why you're not looking at the Mill Creek ones, correct?
So that brings it 100 and 101%. Do you want me to do that? Now these students are within a mile walking of Southern.
And right now, we've got them in Lansdowne.
They could walk to Mill Creek. Yeah, what about Mill Creek?
And if it's on St. Creek.
Yeah, they're most likely within a mile of all of them.
It's more than a mile from Lansdowne.
So what would it do to the numbers if we put them in Southern instead of Lansdowne?
Well, one thing about Southern, we were just discussing our area, study area 535 is that farm that is now going to be developed. It's going to have a lot of new residences that are in Southern's area. So, at the corner of Manowar and Nicholsville.
This area here?
A lot of it is. But there's going to be some apartments.
You know how many units are going in the farm?
Yeah, there's probably about 300 units, but it's all multi-family. There's no single family close to that.
And in talking with your staff, Jim, they stated there's been a lot of requests already to rezone that to commercial, so they think there will actually be less housing there.
Fair enough. Staff's doing good work.
Well, we want some residential in there. That's the problem.
Bob, I don't know the colors here. 507, what is the free and reduced lunch status? Okay, so we don't really want to move those to Mill Creek.
But does that split the neighborhood? That splits 506 and 507, or 506?
No, 506, they back up to each other. They're separate neighborhoods. There's,
But if we put them in the Mill Creek, we're skewing it the wrong way.
No, but I think if you put them into Southern, that would maybe, I think it would make more sense with busing if you're going to bus and reduce lunch number for
right around even, right?
Southern's at, pretty much at 100% capacity. This makes sense going to Veterans or Mill Creek in terms of capacity, and going to Veterans in lunch balance. Although it's obviously discontinuous going to Veterans.
But Southern, it's not going to put it over that much at Southern. There's 40 students in there. Well, we'll put it over a little bit. As a planner, I don't like just picking out random study areas to move just to balance numbers.
Yeah, well, I think that ship has sailed.
Yep.
I think you're right, too. But Southern, it brings up to 104% and lands down to 101%.
And that one's only really random by moving into Veterans, right? If we moved it to Mill Creek, it's not random, right, Scott?
Yes, that's my feeling. If you move it to something that's contiguous, at least it makes a little bit of sense. You got these kids also, they can go, you got to think the access to the schools and where the roads are, et cetera.
Let's don't move it. Let's just leave it and lock it. And that leaves Lansdowne over. I got it.
Does anybody have the projection numbers? What happens to Lansdowne over the next 3 to 4 years?
They increase, they go up. They start as 100, they go to 107, 108, 111, 112.
112 in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we started with today. So we've moved several areas in and out of there. So
What neighborhoods, probably outside main award, were in Lansdowne that would have caused those projection numbers to increase over time?
I would expect that it's more the demographics of Lansdowne, who's moving into the area, and at least that's what's been going on in other parts of town that have enrollment increase projected, even though they don't have new housing. Lansdowne doesn't have any area for that.
Now, but it's based on projection. Glassford wasn't.
No, Glassford's been in Southern in all our discussions.
All right, let's move to another issue. Melissa, you wanted to discuss something?
No.
Okay. Anybody, my notes are on the Shea Road deal.
Middle school.
Yeah, middle school, I'm sorry. Right, the LTMS. And it looked like, on my first reading of it, it was 1 or 2 streets.
Are we saying like what we're going to take to the
What is this,
public?
9 feet
Yeah,
though?
I think so. Well, let me go back. Let me make sure. Are we good here with what we've done tonight? This is what we'll discuss with the public on Thursday for elementary.
Yeah, let me confirm what we did. Is that what everybody's agreeing with? That we moved the 595, 597, and half of 596 to Lansdowne. We moved this area here, South Point, I think it was. Oh, no, that's South Point over here. We moved these 4 study areas from Veterans Park into Southern. We moved these 4 study areas into Veterans Park, and we moved this study area back to Mill Creek. Are we okay with all those changes?
I think that's what we settled on. Am I wrong?
Okay.
at least for our forms.
James, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we done good addressing Ron's concern, but I think we got other areas to work on. But I'm fine with freezing this for the forum and then maybe picking back up on this at the next meeting.
Then what I'd ask you to do is just send an email to the committee and for areas that we can take a look at ourselves, and then we'll be prepared to look at them when we come back to them. That work?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Everybody good with that? If you see anything, let's make a note, bring it to the committee, circulate it, and then if there are those still out there, we'll revisit them 3 meetings from now. Which is, I don't know when the hell it is. Sometime in the far, far future. Okay, the middle school deal. We've got the LTMS today. I want to make sure that what we've done makes sense, and or if we sort of split up a neighborhood unnecessarily.
Ellen, I think this is one of the issues where walking does matter, because 6th, 7th, 8th graders can walk.
Yeah.
So when we had the shade just within sight of that school building, it would be nice to see if we could do something about that.
My thinking is that this one made sense for us to revisit because of that.
I think their issue was we split up Ashland Park.
Ashland Park?
Ashland Park.
Yeah.
In Ashland.
But it wasn't a clean split, it was just a couple of streets off.
Right. Well, we're making 9 kids go to LTMS or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like 16 per mile.
Right.
A little more.
Right. If we can identify it here.
Scott, in terms of a study area, it's 285.
What, yeah, what middle schools is it?
Morton and LTMS are the 2 in question.
Very close to Morton. It's that street with 2 circles and
Oh, yeah.
So we heard from the shape and not Hanover.
And there's your neighborhood associations. So that's Ashland Park Neighborhood Association, this one. And this is Asselford Place Neighborhood Association. So you would like me to split 285 down Ashland. Is that correct?
Yes. I think that's what I want. Yes.
We
Okay.
better look at SB2 while we're doing this, right? Go to Cass.
Well, don't we have it in Cassidy?
no, it's in Ashland.
Okay.
Should split the street, I'll split it behind. There's that one street.
The back fence, not the front yard.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, whatever the neighborhood association.
We're talking about right over there. Right.
Yeah.
Why don't we just
Okay.
make this a school? Okay. Marlene?
Is Principal Alan Stein? The mascot will be
I was thinking superintendent, wasn't it?
Charter school.
I'll take care of that charter.
Yeah, maybe. Well, attract a lot of them.
Okay, do we have any other area we want to tackle? Because I can't show it. I can't show this moved right now. The whole study area has to be in one or the other.
Just show us again the neighborhood association line.
Yeah.
Right on Ashland.
Right on Ashland.
Can we pull up how many students are in there?
Jim is
And do they go to
That Ashland's the end of that neighborhood. Street starts Clay Avenue. and all.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Yeah, it is.
Get those kinds.
And then on that first block at Central,
You're getting both sides of Ashland, right?
No, this line shows Ashland right on the street on both sides. So
That's probably
I found two. It says the Shays Road,
yeah,
4 families with elementary children and 9 kids altogether.
right, the number did specify.
Right, okay.
Putting them in the right place. So down the back of the property line makes more sense there, correct?
Yes.
I think for Ashland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the backyards.
Halfway between Ashland and Clay, correct?
Right.
So we're going to go property lines here?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so there are 3 students in this area.
All right. 3 students?
3 students.
Heard from 2 of them? Or 3 of them?
I believe so.
Somebody's asking you that
Have Scott do the same thing at the elementary.
Yeah, I think we probably should. No, I don't think we should say that. Does anybody disagree with that? Again, how many kids we talking about? 3? 9?
Or
There
9.
was 3 on here, right? Yeah.
I recall
3 middle school.
the emails we got too, so
Yeah,
they
we
didn't
used
care
it.
if they went to Ashland or Cassidy.
Right.
They were more
The back lot line there, okay?
Okay, and you want me to move this area for the elementary also?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, folks, we're sort of at,
Probably. Shouldn't we look at it to make sure there's not something funky going on there already?
but we'll see it Thursday.
If there is something, we'll hear about it.
And trust me, we're going to hear about it anyway.
Hey, Alan, since we
Yes,
looked at
Betsy.
elementary, we talked
Hello,
about
Betsy.
middle. Can we do something, can I say a few things about high school, just to throw out
Yes.
some points?
Please,
If you
absolutely.
put the high school back up.
Yes, yes, yes.
The Pickett
Betsy,
Elementary,
before you do, let me just
the Copperfield area.
remind everybody, again, as we said in elementary, if you see or know of any anomaly, what appear to be anomalies, not major litigation points, send them to the full committee so we can know, we can have a baseline of what we're going to talk about 3 meetings from now. And so I don't say it again, same thing on high school. Okay? Thank you, Betsy. Go ahead.
The Copperfield area that we moved from Lafayette, I just want to point out just a few things about that. Dunbar's closer to that area than Lafayette. It's 4 lights to get to Dunbar from Copperfield. And then the travel from that area to Lafayette, going down Clay's Mill, it's a high-trafficked area. It's not safe for student drivers. You're passing crossing guards. Jesse Clark, Mary Queen, Lexington Catholic. Harrisburg Road's not even better. Going down Harrisburg Road through the Double Diamond and crossing over to Pasadena, it's not even better. So those are our 2 concerns. And then it is a large number of middle class leaving that area as well.
Would you include that plantation area in that as well?
Yeah.
Because they're right there together. I think ends up being about 200.
And while those are great points, what do you suggest?
I think we should look at an area closer to Lafayette. We need to move an area out of Dunbar. They need to be closer to Lafayette because the traffic isn't so great.
Well, let me just throw out an idea. On balance, we have moved that Lee's Town corridor with Connell Trace into Dunbar from Bryan Station. If we were to take a look at Copperfield and Plantation again, does it make sense to balance it on the extreme other end and put McConnell's Trace back into Bryan Station.
We probably need McConnell's Trace for socioeconomic reasons.
Well, I understand that. In fact, I'm confident that's the reason.
Yes. So to answer your question, no. Right.
No.
And does it make sense?
It's not up to me. You know, I'm just throwing it out there for consideration. Is there another? All right, let's look at it another way. Betsy, any?
The area inside New Circle Road.
I think that's right. I think if you take the Garden Springs, Beaumont Park area and move it to Lafayette, I can get to Lafayette quicker from my house in Garden Springs than I can get to Dunbar.
Anybody making notes on it, because we're not going to do this tonight, but this is one of those things I want to revisit. So somebody actually write this down, take notes, so that we can actually look at it. And
I got it.
I mean, I'm talking about the committee.
If the principal of Beaumont feels we're here with maybe saying the same. Why are we talking about Dunbar, not Beaumont?
Well, and I think that's where in lies the rub, is once you get in that Garden Springs area, those students will still need to continue at Beaumont if we're going to leave them at the closest school. So those kids inside New Circle Road would go to Beaumont, and then they would go to Lafayette.
And
there would
what about Copperfield?
Copperfield would stay, I guess,
And Jesse Clark?
No, they would go to Beaumont.
Right now we've got them at Jesse Clark, so if we're going to talk about that, then we also need to go back and open up that whole move of Copperfield.
And it all starts with Claysville Elementary.
So we're only talking, right, it starts with Claysville Elementary, so we're only talking about Dunbar because Betsy's here. Would we, if the other principals were here, would we also be opening up those two booths?
That's your own call.
She's right. I mean, that's open for discussion. I think Betsy's point is a good one.
I think that Betsy makes a good point too. I'm saying that I think that we need to look at it, the big picture, or we're going to be back here having the same conversation again at the middle school level and back here again at the elementary school level. If we're going to talk about Copperfield, let's talk about Copperfield.
Shut it down. On the agenda.
First thing on the agenda for next Tuesday.
Well, maybe not first. At least to make sure we don't lose sight of that one. All right. Well, but I want that circulated to committee so everybody can be thinking about it, looking at their maps, so we're prepared for those discussions when we come back. Are there any others that somebody wants to point out specifically? Would James leave?
There's a few others, but I can send an email out.
Okay, all right,
Much easier.
that's good.
I am curious, if, Melissa, your point on Dixie was just based on the socio numbers flipping?
Right.
Okay.
And Bob's response was what?
What you're doing with the attendance boundaries hardly changes Dixie at all. You're moving about 20 or 30 kids. It doesn't change Dixie. Dixie, the number is probably misunderstood because whatever it said 69, but when you back it,
Okay.
Do you know what the percentage is on the magnet right now?
in terms of
Socioeconomic, reduced lunch. With respect to just the kids in the magnet program.
At Dixie?
Yes.
Or,
And Dixie and LTMS both.
no, I do not. We can find that out.
Okay. I think that's good to know.
is that bindable?
Out area kids that go to those schools.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, with all the special programs, that might not be a bad thing to have out there. It's just to have the numbers of the kids in those special programs.
I begin to wonder how relevant it is in terms of our work, because it's unpredictable. It probably changes from year to year. It's not like a neighborhood or an area of poverty or affluence. It's not. I mean, it's a interesting to have the information.
Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, if you think about the accelerated cluster programs that go to Winburn, Henry Clay, and Dunbar and such, I think there is a distinct difference in the economic status of those kids. So I think those would be good numbers to have to see what it does to the school.
Well, if they are findable, that's fine. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Any thoughts about what I've proposed for our public forums committee? So, are we on the right track? We need to consider something different for.
I have a question.
Sure.
If there's going to be 2 of us or whatever stick around
We want.
per table,
Depending on how many people are there, but we've got 36 tables. There's only 24 of us.
25 tables.
Oh, reduced it.
So 25 tables that will seat 24 people each. We'll have sticky notes all around the tables. We'll have pens all around the tables. There will be a chart paper, and then there will be an easel with a set of 3 maps. Your changes, the changes tonight that you made to elementary, middle, and high school maps. We'll have the 11 by 17 maps spread all around. So the first question is, you're going to do a greeting. Do we need a PowerPoint? You guys have things you want to say? Or are you just inviting everybody to, here are the maps, just pick a place? Will the committee members introduce the maps?
Will each table have a set of all 3 maps?
You'll have a large size, a clip to a foam core, and then you'll have 11 by 17 maps.
And all the tables will have pads of paper for people
Yes,
to
for the
write on.
large size.
So we're not taking notes, we're actually
Correct.
listening.
People can write their own. If you'll please ask them to write as neatly as possible. Hannah will be typing them for us, so we need legibility. I don't even know if that's a word. And then we'll have a notepad, and there's around the table there's a set of some suggested guiding questions that Alan kind of threw at me. I typed them up, and they're around there. You guys might love them, hate them, want to change them, but you could, so this is where you guys need to tell us how you'd like this forum to happen.
Can I make a suggestion? That there should be an opening statement, because the committee has put in a lot of work. They've dedicated a lot of time to this, and the public might not be aware of that. So they should know how much work, the amount of data that's gone into this, and the amount of time, and that this is just draft, too. So that all should be done up front.
I'd suggest that there be 2 quick welcomes. Arlene, Dr. Helen, and myself. Where we can touch on that, and clearly we need Bob and Lisa there as resources. Do we need Scott? I think
I don't know
not.
if he's available, but
I think not. That would really get into the weeds.
If you have it there, then you're opening yourself up.
Yeah, I think we don't need Scott.
Scott, you'll be thinking of us. Go to a beach somewhere.
Okay.
And Dr. Helm, if you're not available, Mary, or someone from administration, just to say hello.
When you say table, I'm sorry.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
you say table of 24, are you meaning like this, or are you meaning like a really big?
No, but you remember how we had them set up for the listening sessions before? We had we had 4 rectangular tables, kind of 2 T's, and then, I think, or maybe even a T and I don't know how they're going to set them up.
So it'll be easy to listen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So are we supposed to take notes on the flip chart?
No. That we will have sticky notes, like, the large size Post-its and pens. And so as you go around the room and people share their thoughts, they'll write their own ideas. And then if you guys want to use the guiding questions, then you would put, question 1 and have them all stick their sticky notes up there. Question 2.
I think we need to be consistent.
Yes, that's why you guys need to table. At each table. Yes. And then the other thing would be if you would like, I totally lost my train of thought. Sticky notes. We're going to have the maps. I'm sorry, it'll come in.
Did you say that there will be a copy of the guiding principles or something?
No, but we can have those.
Yeah, we probably should do that.
Okay. Hannah, are you writing that down for me, hon? So we'll have copies of the guiding principles. and instead of the 3 maps.
Has everybody got a copy of the suggested questions?
It was the second page. It was stapled to your grandfather, the list of topics that you guys still have to decide.
I'm proposing that each of the committee members use this as a guideline to make sure that we touch on areas of discussion. But I'm not suggesting that it be regimented necessarily. Just use them as a guideline as you're most comfortable. And I really don't want us debating anyone. Taking suggestions, listening, and encouraging conversation, but we're not there to debate, defend, or advocate. We're there to listen to the public. And I think these questions sort of indicate that without being asking for our opinions or advocacy. They're certainly not adversarial. So that's my suggestion.
We may want to look, if you're looking at the questions, I don't know that we have one that says, do you have any suggestions, any specific suggestions for improvement?
I don't think you need to put that on there.
We'll get that part.
You know, not to be a smart ass or anything, but
In terms of the
in
terms of the adversarial piece, I just, maybe perhaps, Alan, as part of your opening remarks, you just remind people to be respectful here, given some of the comments we've had. I mean, I don't think it's going to be, I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be a case where we have our table and a group comes and sits with us for 2 hours.
I don't think so.
They're going to move from table to table to table to try to talk to as many people as they can. We've already been told that. So that's going to.
That's what I would do. Because I'd want to advocate my thoughts and share them with as many different people as I can.
So that being said, instead of that being said, if we're going to have a tablet there for putting notes on, perhaps we could have them all with these things, these questions written on them in advance. So we can just flip it, and then people can stick their stuff on there, and we don't have to be spending time writing the stuff down and going back over it again.
Okay.
And even though we're there to listen, I think it might actually be good for us to have notebooks so we can, because it almost feels like we're not listening. When you're talking to someone and you're giving them your thoughts and they're not writing them down, that you really don't feel like they're hearing you, or that you're not going to remember. Like, how are you remembering all of this that I'm saying to you?
Bring a note.
We'll have notebooks for you.
I'm serious. Like,
I have a stack of notebooks in my office. I like notebooks that have holes in them, and I have some notebooks that don't have holes in them. So we'll bring those.
One austere moment is shed aside.
We should videotape every table so we can transcribe it.
That was the other question. Do you want to do, okay, when we did the session the last time,
I was joking.
when we did the session the last time, we had, everybody came and sat, there was a facilitator, there was a committee member, everybody stayed where they were. I mean, I don't think people understand that you're really serious when you say that you guys are sharing every single email. So you are reading, you know, we get 27 people who say, Lisa, please share this with the committee. And you all have the same email. So we don't need someone to go tell 27 of you the same thing, because we're going to type up everything they say, and you're going to discuss it, and you're going to read it. So one way that you could do this is you could have your discussion, and then you could all share out, like we did at the last forum, if you'd like to do that. That also kind of gives you a limit to, this is the hour and 15, 20 minutes that we're spending in our conversation, and then this is the 5 minutes that each table shares.
And I think that would be a better use of our time for parents to have to move from table to table when they're just going to be saying the same thing to us from what they said at the other table. That way, everybody feels like at that specific table that they get a chance to have their voice heard. They're still at that table. You know, if we're there for 2 hours, say 15 minutes on the first 4 questions, that would be an hour, and then the last hour to go and have a spokesperson at each table share out what.
I don't want to do that. I just don't think that we should limit as many people to say as much as they want to. we've invited the public to share with us their thoughts about our process, about our conclusions, and we hope giving us their suggestions. And if by sharing out, you're going to hear a lot of the same things anyway. I don't know if you remember or not, but in our 2 previous sessions, people were moving from tables. I mean, we had it set up so that they would say that, but many got up and moved to another table and shared it around. So I don't think that we're going to be able to stop that from happening.
I think it would also be difficult to share out when it's such a personal, passionate matter, because if I'm sitting at a table with somebody in the neighborhood and they've been moved and I haven't, I mean, how am I going to share that out? I think also it would make me feel more like I was being heard if I had the opportunity to move and talk to everybody.
And as we have learned, there are folks in the same neighborhoods on the same streets who have different ideas about what we've done. And I think trying to consolidate that, share it out, and, oh, by the way, we only have 2 hours. Reducing that by 15, 30, or 45 minutes, I think is going to be kind of productive.
I'd like to spend the whole time listening to folks.
So are we going to have some kind of a bell or something that says, 10 minutes at this table, 10 minutes at that table?
They just
People just walk
do what they want to do. They'll talk to who they want to talk to.
It's not speed dating. It's not speed dating.
You want to sit there and
speed dating?
You are so wrong, Doug.
We need to stop with speeds.
How do you know about speed dating?
The thing is, in terms of the sharing, I don't know, at the end of this process, when as a committee we come to some consensus and put this down, I don't know whether we want to talk about going out there again or this is something we just turn over to the board, and the board will get plenty of opportunities for people to come in and talk to them.
Now, I don't have an objection when Hannah puts all of these comments together, that once we consolidate them, because there are going to be so many duplicated thoughts and comments, we can share that.
Oh, yeah.
On the website.
Oh, that was our intention. We did that with the last of
Yeah, I think it's fine. We should share it with people who are there as well as those who are not.
We'll undoubtedly talk about common themes that we hear about as well.
The theme that all we heard in the first session, if you'll recall, was really just about integrity of neighborhoods. That's all we heard. We didn't hear anything else. And, that's the folks who were there, that was what was important to them. I'm hopeful that we'll have many, many more things to discuss this time. I guess we will. But you never know. This is a public opportunity to tell us what's important to them. And I don't expect a consensus there either.
Do you like Alan's last question? Before I send him up on our pieces.
I think the last one on how far would you be willing to bus your child, I think that we need to broaden that to be how far would you be willing to transport your child, whether it's busing or you personally drive.
Okay. We can make that change. Any other words missing?
Okay, folks, I think we're set. We know what our plan is. I really want to encourage everybody to think about these anomalies. Please call them what you will, so that when we do convene again, that we get it right. That's the plan for that.
Well, good luck, everybody. Have fun.
Thanks, Scott. I know, Scott.
Oh.